Welcome back to the Mental Health Matchmaker podcast. I'm your host, Brooke, and today we are joined by Jess, a registered therapist whose work is rooted in identity, people-pleasing, and choosing yourself even when it feels uncomfortable. In this episode, we talk about what it means to feel stuck, how people-pleasing can quietly shape the paths we take, and the slow, courageous work of unlearning it. Let's get into it. Jess, I'm excited to have you here. We chatted once before. Well, actually, we've chatted a couple times.
Yeah.
In real life, virtually, and we have a lot of overlaps. This is going to be a fun one.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start by hearing about what you specialize in.
So usually I focus on anxiety, life transitions, personal growth, and like life coaching, depression as well, relationship issues, divorce, separation, that type of thing.
You mentioned life transitions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can you go a little bit further into what that encompasses?
Moving through different life experiences, different life hardships, being stuck, I would say, is a big one, because I think that's part of the journey. That's part of the transitions of life and the stages of change that come with that. I think life transitions and identity sometimes goes hand in hand too. People most of the time just want to know that like this is where they're supposed to be, but then they might have this little buzzing feeling inside that's like, what is happening? Like, this doesn't feel like me. And maybe someone's been following a certain path for so long, and you're going, and you're doing all the things, you're checking off the list, and you end up somewhere and you're just like, am I fulfilled here? And why am I not fulfilled here? I did all the things. that I was supposed to do to get here. I think about young adulthood as well, just the journey through adulthood as a whole, to actually discover who their authentic self is.
I like how you connected like life transitions with checking in with where you're headed and ensuring that you're connected to your journey. Mm-hmm. Because this is where we can dive right into people pleasing.
Sure.
So taking all these steps that you think are the right thing to do, that you think you should do,
mm-hmm.
and getting to the end point and being like, first of all, how did I get here? And second of all, why do I feel so unaligned,
mm-hmm. unfulfilled?
I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's scary because there's like a sense of grief in that. And maybe if you fall into people-pleasing tendencies, maybe there's a lot of other suppressed emotions where over the years you've not been connected to your voice and your decisions have been informed by other people or your perception of what other people would want. And it's hard to feel connected to yourself when you're living life through that lens.
Yeah, and it's hard because like you start as a child, learning through the people closest to you and understanding social cues and patterns from those influences. And then you kind of discover perhaps like your role in that dynamic, and then think about your role outside of that dynamic that might continue into friendships and romantic partnerships. And it just continues on and on until one day or one moment or one breakdown. If there's resistance in your life, I would say just sit with it and try to understand what is behind that. Like, is it just like a bump on the road and you're going to continue to go through that trajectory? Or is there something bigger at play? Is there something that your intuition is also sensing too, about that resistance?
Because sometimes there is this voice in our heads, and occasionally something can pop up. Like if we enter a new situation or a new experience where we're like, oh, this doesn't feel right. And maybe we know that in that moment or in that circumstance, it's just because it's this new thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then when we continue to hear that voice and it seems like it's just always there beneath the surface, and like you said, that resistance continues on and on and on, there might be something more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also the first step of holding space for yourself.
Yeah.
I'm both taking a deep breath. Like, the resistance.
The resistance. Oh, I felt it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've ignored it many
Oh,
times
yeah.
too.
Oh, yeah.
I remember chatting with you about a moment that you had
Mm-hmm.
where you realized, holy crap, this is a huge moment and I feel empty inside.
Mm-hmm. So this was graduating from my undergrad. And yeah, it was a special time. Obviously, it was exciting. Well, it was supposed to be. Like, I had just achieved this big accomplishment. I'll just never forget walking across that stage and just, putting on a smile but just feeling so empty inside.
And it obviously made such a mark.
I mean, everything from that point forward got me here. And so that's like, it's a success story at the end of the day. But in the moment, it doesn't feel that way at all. And this is what I talk about a lot with clients, is about this feeling of being stuck in making a decision, making a choice. And I do have a metaphor that I like to share.
Please share.
Okay. Another stage in my life where I met resistance is where I kind of developed this metaphor. At the time it was spring, and I love walking, so I go for a lot of walks. I was just trying to be very mindful on my walks, and I was looking around, and I was, just taking in the lovely season of spring. And I was looking around and I was like, wow, spring is actually kind of icky. There's a lot of mud, there's a lot of excess water, there's a lot of like random debris, trees everywhere, branches. I just sort of thinking about the greater meaning and purpose behind spring, and I start to think about, well, where does it fall within the season? Okay, it's between winter and summer. Okay, so I guess it could be a bridge. The mud and the water is used to start to nourish our earth and prepare for the abundance of growth. The excess debris, you can see the animals like actively using them to build their nests. When you're feeling in resistance or stuck or in the mud of life, it's so unclear what's happening. And that's part of the process. And often it's not clear till like later what the reason or purpose or meaning behind that period was. That period of life was definitely a stepping stone to getting to where I am now. And that's why we talk about the journey of therapy as well being non-linear and messy.
Yeah, it is
that's
messy.
just the truth of it. Not to scare anybody.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I were to hear that when I was feeling stuck, I'd feel relief in the sense of, oh, I'm not alone in that.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think you get to a certain point where you're like, this feels messy and it's really unpleasant. And to have that validated might actually be somewhat hopeful to hear. Not that it's fun by any means. Also, I was thinking, I love this example, and I love turning to the seasons and looking at this bigger world we're a part of, remembering we're a part of it. So of course, these seasons, they play into our lives as well. It makes a lot of sense. You mentioned thinking of this season as a bridge. I think the interesting thing and the important thing to remember is that we are afraid of the uncertainty and that piece that feels unclear, that feels muddy, but that taking just one step towards where we want to head, however it feels, is still going to move us closer to where we want to go. Why do you think therapy helps with that?
I think because there's just so much emotion that comes with those changes. So if you have therapy and that safe space to unpack all those different feelings and emotions associated with these different life transitions, it's helpful to focus on you and only you.
Which is very new territory for someone who struggles with people pleasing.
Yes.
Like my first therapy session, I probably walked in and was like, I can't tell you who I even am.
Creating that safety in the therapeutic environment is especially important, and building rapport building trust and building a relationship with your therapist so that you can feel like it's about you and you can feel connected and you can feel comfortable to, get into those things that you might not have admitted to yourself, admitted to others, So good for you, Brooke, for doing the work.
Good for you.
It's so brave.
Yeah, it's like putting a mirror in front of your face and for the first time saying, tell me the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the truth is so scary.
Yeah.
Especially when we feel like we've locked ourselves into a situation.
Yeah.
So we're like, well, this is my whole identity now. So I don't want to face the truth because the truth might be I have to leave everything I've built or I have to start over.
Yeah. What is interesting, what's coming to mind as you shared that was, I believe it was from Dr. Schwartz's book, No Bad Parts. He kind of shares how often society and within families as a whole shames people into change. What are those external factors telling you? What are the messages that you're hearing from those external factors? How influential are they? And how does that influence the way you speak to yourself? And imagine like having self-compassion to fuel change versus shame to fuel change.
As far as other external factors, like family, society, what else is there?
I would say social.
Do you think that part of why therapy is so helpful is because we can create the separation from all of these influences and see what actually feels true for us beneath the surface?
Yeah, because I think people perhaps, again, you're just kind of going day to day in your life, and when you're like, oh gosh, there's so much resistance here in this piece of life, what's the conflict within yourself? Like, it's almost like all these influences say this, but then I'm saying this, but it doesn't align. They contradict, or they don't really meet. So it's kind of unpacking those aspects. And it just kind of, I think, supports people in understanding who they are without all the noise, what's important to them. It can also be like just sitting in the process and being like, it's okay that this is what's happening for you right now. Yeah.
Those moments are so valuable.
Yeah.
Just going from ignoring what's beneath the surface to just opening the door a crack is a step. Like, and these are the steps that then lead to bigger steps and ultimately change.
Picking up the phone, or booking a consultation call, like, emailing a therapist, like, those are huge steps.
Because you've already opened the door to something potentially different in your future.
Yeah.
You don't know what it looks like yet, but you've opened the door.
And that's where courage is.
If I'm booking that session, if I'm making that call, that's time I am choosing to carve out for myself.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like. Like, we can detach from the outcome. It's just that act alone, especially for someone who hasn't done much for themselves.
Yeah.
Or who has lived their life basing their decisions around what they think other people will want from them. That is a huge step.
Yeah.
Talk more about building self-trust. How do you support your clients with that if they come to you and they don't feel like they have a trusting relationship with themselves?
Sometimes it's the first time people are telling their story from their perspective. So really understanding this piece. And then being collaborative, for sure, being curious. I think also partly is allowing space for them to be in the process, because that's where, like, that icky, messy part is also a huge part of the journey. I guess for me, it's more about like witnessing them build it, but reflecting back and asking questions to support them in understanding, okay, what feels good for me in this scenario?
The picture you're painting, it reminds me that like so much of life is an experiment.
Trial and error.
Yes, and we've both talked about perfectionism and our struggles in that area. And so I also think that in the past I've had, and maybe still, I've had a hard time making any decision or taking any step because I'm so afraid of taking the wrong one.
Yeah.
But sometimes that means that we do have this sense of, well, I'm completely stuck then. So now I either stay stuck or I take a step and it might be wrong. But either way, I will accumulate more knowledge, even if the knowledge is, I didn't like how that felt.
Yeah, exactly.
That ends up still adding to my library of understanding.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love how you put that. Yeah. The library of understanding.
I just whipped that out.
I love it.
The odd time I create a new term. I don't really like. I could do better. I'll come up with something better.
Oh, it doesn't have to be perfect, Brooke.
But I do picture myself. Thank you. I do picture myself like continuing to walk, continuing to accumulate things that are forming this deeper understanding of myself, and not being so fixated on right versus wrong, because that can be paralyzing.
Yeah, and it could be more about like, is this feeling, on the like supporting me in the direction that I would like to go, or is it not supporting me in the direction that I'd like to go and maybe unaligned? But then again, something to note. Okay, maybe won't do that.
These moments of contrast still have an impact.
Yes, and this is being human.
Whoa.
I think we kind of forget it when we're in the thick of things and in life, like just learning through different life experiences. But we're allowed to learn.
We have to.
At any stage of life.
Well, it's all new to us, right? Every stage we encounter, every stage we embark on will be new to us.
Oh, gosh.
We have this idea also, and then I think it kind of shocks us when we reach our adult years, where we for so long have looked to these authority figures and adults, thinking they know the answers, they have it all figured out. Then you reach adulthood and you're like, well, first of all, I disagree with maybe a lot of those figures and how they handled certain things or how they meant, and I would do it differently. And also compassion in knowing that they probably got it wrong a few times by accident because they were also learning.
This makes me think about like intergenerational patterns, that people work through too. But there's a quote that says, the reasons for which you feel you need to heal are not your fault, but healing is your responsibility. Through the learnings and shedding of different parts of who you thought you should be, or who you've been told to be, you're a trailblazer and you're setting up the next generation. That's a big responsibility. And I just don't think, individuals who especially come to therapy recognize that the work they're doing is not only supporting themselves, but it will impact others.
It ripples outwards in all directions. We've covered a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you for all that you've shared. Is there one thing that you could say to our audience if they are thinking about booking into therapy and they haven't taken that step yet?
I guess what came to mind was like, trust yourself. I do in-person in Mississauga. And then I also do virtual sessions.
Virtual and Mississauga.
Yes.
Lovely. All right. Thank you so much for everything you've shared. This has been lovely.